Good morning to all of you. Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. It is Sunday, May 1st of 2022, and I am the Reverend Dr. Kadar Walker, and I am just so honored and delighted to serve as the minister of this wonderful community. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are from, you are welcome here. You are welcome if you are a longtime member or this is your very first time. We are delighted that you've made the time and space in your life to come together in a worshipful community. It is delightful to be together. We are a community to get dedicated to welcoming the stranger, working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has woven into the fabric of life. And I know that those of you who are here in this chapel made an extra effort to be here this morning. We put up all sorts of barriers that you had to cross, and you made it, thank you, into the center of the universe right here on Marathon Sunday. And for those of you who are watching from near and far, this is Marathon Sunday in the city of Pittsburgh, and this church is right in the middle of the race course. We are surrounded by people who are running for 26 miles, and we are suitably impressed. If this is your very first time with us, we would love to be in touch with you. And whether or not you are watching this live right now or later today or next month, please visit our website. Just Google us, First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. Down at the bottom of our main page, you'll find a form to fill out to get on our newsletters. You can stay informed, and we can be again connected with you as well. And if you would like to talk with some of our members, there is a social hour on Zoom following this service right around 11:45 a.m. You can get the Zoom link for that by sending an email to First Unitarian Pittsburgh. All one word, firstunitarianpittsburgh@gmail.com. And as you may have surmised by now, I am live here in the sanctuary. I have a wonderful group of talented staff and volunteers. We've had a couple shift overs, but I am just so grateful that they are here. And thank you, Ellen, and our guests Barry and Paul and Will on tech. And we're going to have a wonderful time all together. On behalf of all of us, thank you for being here. And I am delighted to welcome to our worship service a wonderful guest who's speaking with me this morning, Barry Finkelstein. He is a Unitarian Universalist stewardship consultant. He's also a friend. He's also a former neighbor of mine in Alexandria, Virginia. He's also a former church member of mine. So it was very easy for me to recommend him to our brand new stewardship committee, which you'll hear more about later in the service. Barry has been a Unitarian Universalist congregational stewardship consultant since 2007. He's worked with over 50 congregations on annual budget drives, capital campaigns, strategic planning. He has enjoyed participating in stewardship ever since his first introduction to the campus at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Arlington, Virginia in the 1980s. And he found his true calling when he signed up as Unitarian Universalist Stewardship Consulting. I'm telling you, he loves talking about stewardship and money and finances and communities. He lives in, as I said, in Alexandria, Virginia with his wife, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister, almost retired, Reverend Roberta Finkelstein, their dog and their cat. And they live close to family, which is always a delight. So I now invite you to take a deep breath and arrive in body and spirit for this time that we have set aside for worship, and however that means to you, to mentally, physically, spiritually prepare ourselves. Take a deep breath and let go. Be present wherever you are in this time and place. Picture yourself connected to each other in this community across time and place. We are here together. I turn now to our chalice lighting, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. This chalice, this flame, is at the heart of our faith. And today, as we begin a month of reflection on devotion, We're asking questions about to what we are devoted, to what drives our faith, our beliefs, our values, our decisions. May it be grounded in our faith as Unitarian Universalists, to that what we hold as most precious, most valued. We gather today as Unitarian Universalists and those exploring the wide world of spiritual faith. I invite you to stand as you're able in mind and body with number 300, with heart and mind. So for all of those young at heart, and I'm assuming that's everybody in this space, I have a story to offer you. This is a true story titled The Fool at the Country Store. There was a young fellow who hung out at the country store throughout the day. And those who also hung out and came and went decided that they were more intelligent than this young fellow at the country store, that he was a bit foolish. So they would tease him relentlessly. They would play tricks on him. And they developed a game one day, a trick, where someone would hold out a dime and a nickel. And they would say, "Go ahead and choose one." Right? Just choose the one you want. And the fellow would stand there thinking about it, scratching his head. And they all thought, of course, he's going to choose the big one. And they said, "You want the big one, right?" And he thought and he chose. And indeed, he chose the nickel, the big one. And this would go on. And each time the people would laugh at the foolish young fellow. This story was told by Spiv, true story. And Spiv said, "I don't think that young fellow was as foolish as everybody else thought." Why did Spiv say that? Anybody want to take a guess why Spiv might have been the more intelligent one? He was generous, wanted the other person to keep the dime. Or it could be that if Spiv took the dime, they would have stopped playing the game. As we talk about stewardship, it's important that we include all ages. And all young at heart, recognizing that stewardship is something that sometimes needs to include some humor. One of the things that Barry has done, that for those of you who might be attending our annual meeting of General Assembly for Unitarian Universalists, he has put together a workshop with the Director of Religious Education, Ann Richards, about how to talk with families and children about stewardship. And I understand this is being featured. So on that note, I'm going to invite all of your fun and frivolity and joy in our offering. As we invite your generosity to support this community, this is community supported by our volunteers, by our members who are here with the acts of generosity. You are welcome to throw cash at us. Nickels and dimes are fine. You are welcome to write checks. You are welcome to put them in the United States Post Office. That's all fine too. You also find information on the order service for electronic donations, including texting. You can send give to 412-435-1050 and follow those instructions. Barry is doing that right now. I'm watching him. Yeah. So please, will the ushers please come forward for the offering? One of the things I know in our joys and sorrows, at least for today in this marathon, is that it is a joy to have such activity and thriving life in our community, and a bit of a sorrow that it's a thunder and lightning storm while they are running. For those of you who are not here in Pittsburgh, I think they actually held up the race at one point for the safety of the runners because of the lightning. What a joy to have. But it is May. It's May, and we're in bloom, and the city is beautiful. We are also a great joy. Muriel Weeks is turning 98 this week. 98. Happy birthday, Muriel Weeks. I invite you all in this community, just send her birthday cards. Would you just call her or send her birthday cards so she knows how important she is to all of us? What a great joy. I also know that many of us carry sorrows in our heart. We are still just heartbroken over the Ukraine. We are heartbroken over the continued persecution of our gay, lesbian, bisexual, and particularly our transgender friends and siblings in this country. And we so need to speak up about that and make sure that our community members are protected. There is so much that I know is in your hearts personally that you carry with you. And I remind you that you are not alone in this journey, even if you are not able to share the sorrows and the grief. We know that you carry them. Would you please join me in a few moments of silence and personal prayer and meditation? Spirit of love, fill our hearts. Remind us that our bodies are capable of so much generosity. Like the blood pumping through our veins and our heart and our brain, our generosity and love pumps through us. Spirit of the holy, remind us what is most precious, most sacred in our lives. Let us surround ourselves with gratitude. Spirit of love, hold our pain, our disappointment, and our grief and loss. Remind us we do not journey alone. Remind us we all bear deep pains and sorrow and grief. Spirit of life and justice, walk with us, journey with us, sing with us, speak with us, guide us as we commit ourselves again and again to the rejuvenation of justice, to the rejuvenation of equity and equality, for the blessedness of this life, that all may have the opportunity to live fully, without resistance, with fullness of love and life. Spirit of community, fill our hearts and our souls. Spirit of music, hold us in the joy and the laughter and healing that we all need. Blessed be, and amen. One of the reasons why I was excited about coming to First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh, all right, there were a lot of reasons, but one of them was that I read that there was movement afoot to change the culture of stewardship in this community, that there was an intentional effort by leadership, and that a brand new stewardship committee was going to be formed. And I thought, man, that's like a major project. It would have taken me 2 to 3 years to get to where this congregation already is, and you did it. I just think it's brilliant, and absolutely brilliant. And what was also spectacular is that when the board reached out to 9 brand new volunteers to form this committee, they all said yes. They all said yes. So I hope you have the opportunity to thank them. They are working on everyone's behalf, but they truly are working for all of us. It's a community effort, and they can't do it without everybody participating and supporting. So that's E.B. Evans, Ward Kelsey, Maria Lauro, Jennifer Lehman, Eleanor Mayfield, Lynn Porterfield, Jean Schmidt, Al Schwartz, and Scott Smith all said yes out of love for this community. And I'm just so delighted. Even Barry said, what, you got 9 new people to step up to this? He was impressed. He was impressed. Their charter, I'm just going to give you their areas, because you're like, well, what are they going to do? How is this different? Well, it's a year-round committee, first of all, with a standing charter that says they will conduct the annual pledge drive campaign. Okay, good enough. They're also looking at new member stewardship, making sure that our new members have been welcomed properly and understand about the financial commitment they're making. Special fundraising and fundraising events. Oh, we like that, fundraising events. Assistance with capital campaign projects. Okay, sounds good. Planned giving. Planned giving. That's about making sure that this community is in your estate and planning and your will. Going for grants. We actually just got one. You may have seen we made the paper, along with several other religious organizations, for security and safety. And identifying new fundraising sources. So that could be anywhere from more rentals, or maybe we'll have a pop-up event here, and all sorts of opportunities. So I have deep gratitude for these extraordinary people who have the vision and the steadfastness to create a new culture of stewardship and fundraising and fun. Well, let's get into it, Barry, shall we? Let me get right into my homily, and we'll understand what they've actually said yes to. And they just had a half-day workshop with Barry yesterday, so I should make sure everybody knows. They've already stepped into their commitment. So I'm going to open with a story, and this is a traditional Aesop story. It's been around for many years. It's the story of a miser. That is somebody who hoarded their money. And this particular fellow, he took all of his wealth and he bought himself a large clump of gold, beautiful gold, and he buried it in his backyard. And every day he would go out and take off the rocks and the dirt and look at his beautiful gold, and then cover it back up. He didn't really need it because he didn't have a whole lot of things to spend his money on. He just liked to look at it, and made him feel rich and wealthy to look at it and know he had it there. Well, one day the neighbors had some workers there doing some renovation work on the house, and the workers noticed the man going out every day and digging something up and staring at it and then putting the dirt back up. They got suspicious. Something's going on there, they said. So that night they brought a shovel over, and they went over and they dug up the gold and stole it. The next day the man went out and saw his gold was gone, and he cried and he wept and he was miserable for days. His neighbor finally said, you could just take a very large rock, go put that in the hole and cover it up and go out every day to look at your rock, because you didn't do anything with the gold, so what difference would a rock make? It's the same value for you. Hidden devotions. hidden devotions. To what are we devoted, and where do we hide them? Devotions are so important, but even more important if we're not talking about them and bringing them out and making sure that they are part of our lived theology. Money, we know, is close to the top of devotions and is usually buried and not talked about. Along with sex and power. Those are different sermons. You're not getting that today. When I was working for Greenpeace as a canvasser several years ago, my goal when I knocked on people's doors was to find their hidden devotion. And when I asked about people what they were devoted, what they valued, they would say, well, healthy living and a healthy planet. They knew I worked for Greenpeace. And I say, yeah, that's true, but that's not really hidden, is it? That's out in the open. You're proclaiming it for everybody. But I wanted to connect that devotion to the hidden one of their money. I wanted to talk about money with them and help them connect it to that which they also really valued, but in such a way it was open, where they could all demonstrate it and they could share it with the universe like light spilling out into the streets. They could be inspired and inspiring, disconnected and then connecting to the environment. I actually made it for 2 years as a Greenpeace canvasser, which is considered quite successful. Culture. We're talking about a cultural change in the capacity to talk about our hidden devotion to money. Culture, it's kind of like, I think I've used this metaphor before, an iceberg. You see most of the culture above the surface, but culture is actually, the hidden culture is most of the iceberg below, where you can't see it. And it's really hard to dig out and bring to the surface. I think one of the biggest problems we have around money, we don't know how to talk about it. How to talk about it. There's very little that shows us healthy ways of talking about money and stewardship. So when I bring up money, and I've used that word intentionally multiple times right now, there may be some associations, some word associations you've started to make. What comes up for you? Feel free to participate. We're going Baptist today. Feel free to participate. What words pop up for you around money? Helpful to others? Yeah. Comfort? Yeah, good. How about shame? Privacy? Protection? Hoarding, being a miser? Safety? Comfort? Sin? We are in a church. Embarrassment? How about obscene? Too much. Embarrassment, too little. Yeah. But the healthier words are generosity, abundance, joy, sharing, power. That's actually a word. It's a good word. Support, giving, and sharing. Recently, the evangelicals have changed this conversation around money. Have you guys all noticed this? They have decided that having wealth is what God wants for us. They have dug up their gold out of the backyard and it's out in the front of their church, and they're saying God wants us all, it's part of God's mission to be wealthy. Well, I may not agree with their theology, but they have changed their culture around money in really powerful ways. Because religious organizations and secular are all about mission. They have tied money to the mission because they know that's why people give. They've taken it out of the backyard. So let's talk about the big one that I find that they have dealt with really well. Shame. The big barrier, money and shame. Shame is the glue that holds classism together. It's a powerful grip, powerful grip. I learned this as a child from my family. When my parents divorced when I was in middle school, My father left and was unemployed for a couple of years, so he couldn't send us any support. My mom had been a parent without working, so she suddenly found herself with 3 kids and no income. We sold the house, moved to a small, very cheap apartment, and she had to take her pride and her shame, for she had grown up fairly comfortable and wealthy and had never wanted for anything. But she had to go downtown and apply for what was then called welfare, so we could get food stamps and public assistance. And we lived from week to week wondering if we had enough money for milk and to pay the bills. She finally had to really swallow her pride and ask her mother for money. I was horrified to watch my mother go through this. I had such deep compassion for her, and I vowed I would never feel shame for being poor. Never. It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I learned a lot about living with virtually nothing. I started babysitting and childcare at 13. I started working when I was 15, and I haven't stopped. And I was poor for years until my mid-30s. What got me out of being poor and paycheck to paycheck was I got married. It was often the path for women to step out of being paycheck to paycheck into comfort. I wear what I call my penny time with honor for what it taught me, for what I value, and I never take my privilege for granted. In today's world of churches, we cannot take our privileges for granted. As we dig up our cultural norms and examine financial stewardship, we have to keep in mind the cultural norms around class oppression and harmful expectations, particularly as they intersect with race and education. As a predominantly white, privileged church, we have a lot of power and a lot of potential to harm, as well as to do good. So right now, we know for the last several years, last 10 to 15 years, competition for nonprofits and surviving sustainably with stewardship, that competition is fierce, and it's getting more competitive. So it's a time for change, which is what the evangelicals have done really, really well. And it's time for awareness about our privileges and about the emotions that come up around our idea and conversations of money. What we've learned is that people give generously for three reasons, and it's the poor and the wealthy. Doesn't matter their income, doesn't matter their education or their race or ethnicity. They give for 3 reasons. They want to make a difference. We want to make a difference. You tie it to mission. And the second, we believe in the leadership of the institution, staff and volunteers. And finally, then we know that the money is well managed. Yeah, we want to know it's well managed and taken care of, and it's all done above board in transparent ways. So my goal, the goal of the Board of Trustees of this church, the goal of the new Stewardship Committee, and your goals, I think, is about healthy stewardship. Healthy. We need to dig it out of the backyard and use it to build a better world. And that only happens if we talk about finances and stewardship openly, without hesitation. We talk about how it intersects in our lives, and we see how money can tear down or create. It requires not just talking about money and stewardship once a year during the annual pledge drive. It requires that we understand how and why we give, knowing how church finances work. It also requires that we know how our own finances work. I think we should be giving classes on personal finances. That's what the evangelicals do. We make sure that people understand how their own finances work. Bank accounts, the stock market. Good grief. Does anybody understand the stock market? But we need to make sure that we are bringing what we are devoted to out into the transparent word for everyone. So that means digging up our cultural norms It means that we don't leave a bad taste in people's mouths. This means communicating again and again about our mission and our vision, that we are talking about donating with joy, leading and managing, and putting everything in transparent ways. If we're not talking about the money, you know what we're doing? If we're not talking about finances and stewardship, then we are giving our time and effort to hidden values, hidden devotions. We'll never be able to proudly proclaim, just like the evangelicals, that we are devoted as a universalist to saving this planet and all its inhabitants. If we're being fools, we can't proclaim that we're Unitarian Universalists, that we so believe in the universe and the beauty of this universe, that all are sacred and worthy, and we are here and ready to finance the world's greatest mission. Healthy stewardship is about living our theology, belief in each other, and that all life is precious and sacred. So, my beloved friends and family, I say there are 4 P's to doing this. We got this, 4 P's. Patience, perseverance, persistence, and permission. That's how you change a culture. Patience, this is going to take time. Perseverance takes commitment. Constant reminders, well, that's the persistence. And then permission to make mistakes and try again. Undoing old behaviors and patterns is hard work. It may be uncomfortable. In fact, I guarantee it is going to be uncomfortable at times. It may feel like conflict. That's okay. Conflict is fine. It may feel like the dinner table just got sour. Well, we're serving a different meal. This is okay. 3 reasons why people give. They want to make a difference. They believe in the leadership, well-managed finances. Will you help me dig our devotions out of the backyard, where we can put them out here and do good for this world? As I said earlier, humor helps. It helps for all ages. There were 2 men walking down the street in deep conversation when one of them stopped and said, "Hey, listen, there it is, a cricket." They heard the cricket singing a song. It was there under the bushes. And the other man said, "How did you hear that? I can barely hear it. It's so quiet, but it's beautiful." And the first man said, "Well, it all depends upon what you're listening to and listening for." And he took a penny out of his pocket. And as a group of people walked by, he threw the penny onto the sidewalk and it went ping. And everybody stopped and looked. Depends upon what you're listening for, folks. All depends upon what you're listening for. How is your faith guiding you in what you're listening for? Are you ready to dig up some old hidden treasures in the backyard with me? I turn it over to Barry.
Well, thank you, Kate. What a wonderful start to our thinking about stewardship and devotions. So, it is great to be here with you this morning, and as Kate said, I'm pleased to see so many of you weathered the weather and the marathon route, which was a bit of a challenge for me getting here this morning. So I'll start out by telling you that I'm one of the crazy people, one of the people who likes to wander around our Unitarian Universalist churches and talk about money. And you'll see from my chat, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. And I'm going to hope that many more of you will join me in this craziness. So I'll say that I have a kind of a simple dream for Unitarian Universalist congregations, and it goes along very much with what Kate had to offer this morning. We're very good in our churches at talking about sex. We do that really well. I'm an OWL teacher. We're also not bad about talking about God. Sometimes we have some problems with that, but we can get past that and talk to each other, I think, pretty well. And so my dream is that we all learn to talk about money. And not just money in church, but money in our lives, money in our values, and how money works in the world and how we can make it work differently if we think about it as an intentional resource. Now, I was blessed to be able to spend much of the day yesterday with the 9 wonderful and courageous souls who have signed up for this newly chartered stewardship committee. We spent our time imagining how we might build on your already strong stewardship. You do stewardship pretty well here. To create a culture of abundance, to promote a deeper sense of joyful giving and generosity, and to ensure sufficient resources, of course, to support your mission and ministries. Now, the committee charter includes many important elements, and Kate went over many of them, several of them with you. But one stands out to me. It charges the committee, and I'll read this, with clarifying that fundraising is an all-church effort that involves everyone in the congregation, an all-church effort. And that's, of course, where you come in. So I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But first, I want to share with you a little bit about my journey to give you a feel for how I came to be a money person, and invite you to think as I'm talking about what your journey might be and how you can come to a similar place. So I had never heard of Unitarian Universalism until I met Roberta, who is my current wife, in 1970. And she shared with me something about her experience growing up as a Unitarian in New York City at the community church. And I was impressed, very impressed, to learn that there was such a thing as liberal religion, where people could find their own path. What I knew about from growing up in Brooklyn in a non-religious Jewish family was about high levels of orthodoxy and creeds and beliefs that most of us in my family didn't really go for. So I was quite taken with the notion of liberal religion and with the notion of an activist church, which the community church was. Now, I'll say that it took another decade before I wound up in an actual Unitarian Universalist church. So now we're into the 1980s in Arlington, Virginia. And once I walked in the door, really literally the first time, I knew that I had found a religious home. Everything about the church drew me in. First, it was the ambitious social justice programs that involved many members, including providing sanctuary for Central American refugees and being a host church for an emergency homeless shelter in Arlington County, hosting about 100 people overnight during the winter months for a week at a time. And as might happen sometimes for many of you too, Roberta and I were fairly quickly recruited to help run these 2 programs. I also loved the music. I loved the thought-provoking sermons, the strong sense of loving community and radical hospitality, and the opportunity to get involved right away. Now, early in my tenure in Arlington, my life was changed by, of all things, a stewardship visit. I had been a member of the church for less than a year, I think, and Roberta and I had been asked to pledge as new members, but I really didn't have any understanding of how pledging worked or how the finances of the church worked. But one day I got a call from a member of the board named John, and he said that he wanted to come by and talk to me. Roberta was working at the time, so it was just going to be me. Talk to me about our canvas and about stewardship. I don't know that he used that word, but about my pledge. And so I said, okay. And he came by. And frankly, I was honored and a little surprised that someone brand new would get a visit from somebody on the board. It seemed like kind of an exalted position to me, since I knew nothing about the church, really. But he came by, and we talked for about an hour. And he shared with me some of his story about the church. He had been a member a long time. And talked to me about the finances of the church and about what pledging meant. And it really opened my eyes to what we're all about, at least in terms of financing and running our church communities. And I became a much more generous pledger than I had been before. And even more important than that, I made a lifelong friend. John and I, now it's about 40 years later, still play in a poker group together. Now, another part of my UU journey is about music. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, actually at Coney Island, a few blocks from the beach and the amusement park. Kids' paradise, if you can imagine it. We didn't have very much money, but I was always able to hustle up a little bit of money on the boardwalk in the summers to be able to spend some time at the amusement park. Well, in the Brooklyn environment that I grew up in, I started to play the accordion at the age of 6. And I can't explain why, but for some reason, I loved it. And I played the accordion pretty diligently. It was a devotion of mine. All through high school, when I was fortunate to have been able to form a wedding band. And in Brooklyn at the time, most of the wedding bands had accordions. I had never seen a piano, except maybe in school. Nobody I knew had a piano. The places we played for weddings and bar mitzvahs and everything else didn't have pianos, so the accordion was the big instrument. Now, heading off to college, I kind of let the accordion slip into distant memory over the years, and I kind of forgot about it. But then, in the late 1990s, when my wife, Roberta, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I guess Kate did. My wife is a Unitarian Universalist minister, and she was starting a new ministry in Northern Virginia, and the church was hosting a picnic for us to welcome us to the community, and one of the members was driving us there. And on the way, he started talking to Roberta about the idea of doing a worship service about the music of the Counting Crows. Now, I don't know if any of you know the music of the Counting Crows, but they use an accordion. And so Paul and I, that was his name, we started talking about the accordion and the Counting Crows and his dream of forming a rock band in the church. And that's what we did. And long story short, I have been playing music in all of the many churches that my wife has served since. My wife is an interim and developmental minister, so we've probably been at about, 10 different churches. And I've played music of all kinds in many of them. And I'm currently playing with the Windmill Jazz Collective at Kate's former church in Alexandria, Virginia. So while I get involved in many things at my church, as I mentioned, I'm an OWL teacher, and I still love social justice work, my UU spirituality really centers on music and stewardship. And over the decades, these two ministries have nourished me, have fed my soul, and provided opportunities to grow in both expected and surprising ways. I learned that I am enriched by playing just about any kind of music, even music I don't understand or care much about. For example, I played the upright bass accompanying the folk choir when we were in Connecticut. Not much of a folk music fan, but I learned how to do that. And I played the bandoneon part in a wonderful piece by Astor Piazzolla. That, of course, is an accordion piece. And now I've been playing some Yiddish Ukrainian klezmer music, kind of in recognition of the war in Ukraine, and also the fact that 3 of my grandparents came from a shtetl in what is now Ukraine. But I never would have imagined how much I love doing stewardship work with UU congregations. Now, of course, stewardship is the great enabler. Stewardship provides the resources, the lion's share of the resources that we need to fund our missions and our ministries. Stewardship calls us to be our best selves, our most generous, our most committed, our most faithful, our most devoted to the covenants that we make to one another, to our churches, and to Unitarian Universalism. A definition of stewardship that I like is taking care of something one does not own. Think about that, taking care of something one does not own. We are, after all, the caretakers of our congregations. You are the caretakers of this wonderful church, keeping the flame going during our time. And that is a sacred responsibility that we have taken on from the dedicated people who came before us and that we will leave for the generations to come. That's a powerful image of our role and responsibility. And as I said before, that's where you come in. The good people, your comrades in the pews who have joined this committee, will be calling on you, on all of you, I hope, to do your part in this great stewardship adventure. You'll be asked to think about what the church means for you and for the community and for the world, especially now in these challenging times. You'll also be asked to grapple with your relationship with money, as Kate invited you to do. You'll be asked to come up with and support creative ideas for new ways to generate money for the church you love. You'll be asked to talk with one another about money, and much more than money, about bringing all of your gifts and your passion and your energy. But stewardship is not all about money, and it's not all about giving, and it's not all about serious things like this. It's also about fun, as Kate demonstrated with this, and it's about involving families, it's involving children, And Kate mentioned 3 reasons why people give, and those 3 reasons are super important, but there's also a 4th reason, and I'm sure that this will resonate with each of you. Giving feels good. Giving to something that we love feels good. I know there are times for me where I have made what turned out to be the perfect gift to somebody or to some organization, and there's no better feeling in the world than making that kind of gift. Now, strengthening stewardship will also provide benefits to all of you if you are open to them. You will experience some of what I have come to experience about the joy of giving and the power of generosity to feed your soul. Giving it helps you feel like you have enough, which is a way of being more comfortable in the world. Giving and receiving are also powerful ways that we humans connect with one another and with the institutions that we love. You'll have the opportunity to work with the Stewardship Committee as both a giver and a receiver, and each has the potential to bring you joy and to deepen the connections among you. Now remember, too, that we are a covenantal faith. We do not have a creed. Rather, we base our churches on a set of shared principles and covenants, basically promises that we make to one another and to our congregations. And of course, our congregations are also in covenant with one another through the Unitarian Universalist Association. Among the covenants we share is our commitment to be faithful stewards of our congregations. And we are living in strange times, and the need to take care of each other and promote the values of Unitarian Universalism in the world has never been greater. One of the things that I have seen over the 2 years of the pandemic is that stewardship contacts among members of our churches have been more welcome than ever in the past, simply because people are isolated. And the idea of talking to one another and seeing how we are and connecting as compassionate, committed Unitarian Universalists has been a wonderful opportunity, and that has also led to a deepening sense of stewardship. Now, stewardship so we are called on right now to protect vulnerable people who are under attack. Kate mentioned some of this. We are called to work for equity and justice and safety for all. We are called to grow our souls, to reach out to one another in love and compassion. Stewardship is a critical part of all that, providing the resources that we need, but also bringing us together as a powerful and loving faith community. Now, this is also a time of promise and opportunity. I am so excited, and have been even before the days of the pandemic, about the potential for multi-platform ministry, reaching out to an online community. I have this dream that we could have vast numbers of people who will participate in our activities, whether they become formal members or not. And I'm so pleased to see our churches investing in the multi-platform promise. Now, I ask all of you to seize the opportunity of this moment and work with the Stewardship Committee when you are called on to further the mission of this church and sustain a culture of generosity and commitment that will outlast us all. And be sure to have fun doing so. Now, I forgot my order of service up here, and I was going to introduce the next hymn, which I don't remember what it is. So please join me in singing Building a New Way, hymn number 1017, and what could be more fitting than what we've been talking about?
We are building
I invite you to bring your voices together as we extinguish our chalice. The words are in our hearts as well as the program, words that are said by Unitarian Universalist churches across the country. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go forth, my beloved. Go forth into this world, cross those boundaries, both visible and invisible, and start a new word, a new evangelizing of how to support and create justice for all, beauty and love to uplift this world. It is worth saving, one soul at a time. Go forth and return again with love.